No one in the mansion knew that morning would change everything. Michael Carter, a powerful billionaire known for his strict ways and cold heart, stood by his office window, staring at the city skyline. Behind the walls of wealth and success, his home felt empty. His wife had passed years ago, and his only son, 8-year-old Ethan, had been diagnosed with autism at just 3. Michael loved his son but struggled to connect with him. Every effort ended in silence or confusion. For months, he'd hired caregiver after caregiver, but none lasted long. Most treated Ethan like a burden. Some quit within days. Others stayed for the paycheck but lacked patience. So when a new maid named Clara arrived, quietly taking her place in the mansion, Michael decided to test her. Without telling anyone, not even the head staff, he disguised himself as the new janitor. Dressed in old clothes and a cap that shadowed his face, he moved quietly through the halls. For the first time in years, the billionaire walked his own corridors unnoticed, mop in hand, mask of humility on his face. Clara didn't know who he was. She treated everyone kindly, from the cooks to the drivers. When she greeted him that morning with a gentle smile and said, "Good morning, sir," Michael felt something shift. No one ever called the janitor, sir. He followed her as she began her day, sweeping, dusting, folding towels with care. When she passed Ethan's playroom, she paused. The boy sat alone, building towers out of blocks, not looking up. Most people would have walked away. But Clara sat down beside him, her voice soft and patient. "Can I build with you?" she asked. Ethan didn't respond, but he didn't move away either. That was enough for her. Brick by brick, she began to mirror his rhythm, stacking blocks, letting him lead. Slowly, Ethan turned his head, studying her, curious. For the first time in weeks, he made eye contact. From the corner of the room, behind his mop, Michael froze. The janitor disguise had been meant to expose a lie. Instead, it was revealing a truth he never expected. He'd watched so many people fail to reach his son. But now, a simple maid was doing what money never could, reaching Ethan's heart. For the first time in years, Michael stayed hidden in plain sight. He pretended to wipe the hallway floor while secretly watching Clara through the glass wall of the playroom. She didn't know she was being observed, and that's exactly how he wanted it. What he didn't expect was how deeply her actions would start to affect him. Every morning, Clara arrived before sunrise. She didn't rush her duties or complain about the long hours. Instead, she hummed softly as she worked, the kind of songs that used to fill the house before his wife died. The sound echoed through the cold mansion, and somehow, it made the air feel lighter. Michael noticed how she never spoke to Ethan like a patient. She spoke to him like a person. Most caregivers followed scripts, short words, slow sentences, fake smiles. But Clara didn't force anything. She met Ethan where he was. Sometimes they'd sit in silence for 20 minutes, and then she'd quietly roll a toy car across the floor toward him. Other times she'd draw little pictures on scraps of paper, sliding them to his side, whispering, "Your turn." To Michael's surprise, Ethan started responding. Slowly at first, a nod, a small smile, a glance. Then one morning, Clara found him waiting at the door before she even arrived. He didn't say a word, but the look in his eyes said enough. He trusted her. Michael felt something twist in his chest when he saw it. For years, he had tried to bridge that same gap, spending fortunes on therapies, specialists, and fancy equipment. None of it worked. Yet this woman, this maid he thought he needed to test, was doing the impossible with patience, compassion, and no reward in sight. That night, when everyone went to bed, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat in his study replaying everything he had seen. He pulled out his phone and opened the surveillance feeds. Clara was still awake, sitting beside Ethan's bed. She wasn't being paid for that hour. She just stayed, humming softly until the boy drifted off to sleep. Michael leaned back, his heart heavy. He had built his life on control, on never showing weakness. But now he was questioning everything. The disguise that was supposed to expose deceit was instead exposing his own blindness. The next morning he decided to test her one more time. He deliberately spilled coffee near the kitchen counter, just to see her reaction. Without hesitation, Clara knelt down, cleaned it up, and smiled. "Accidents happen," she said gently. No anger. No complaints. No judgment. When she turned away, Michael caught himself smiling too, something he hadn't done naturally in years. What he didn't know yet was that Clara's kindness came from her own pain. Behind her calm eyes was a past filled with loss, something that would soon bring both of their worlds crashing into a truth neither was ready for. 4 days, Michael continued his quiet observation. From behind his janitor disguise, he swept halls, wiped tables, and carried out small maintenance tasks, all while secretly studying Clara's every move. Yet the more he watched, the harder it became to remember why he started this in the first place. Clara had a calm presence that seemed to soften everything around her. Even the house staff, who used to walk on eggshells around Michael's son, began to relax when she was near. She never raised her voice. She never rushed Ethan, and when he shut down, rocking slightly, avoiding eye contact, she didn't panic. She simply sat beside him, quietly placing one hand on the floor next to his. Sometimes, that was all it took for him to breathe again. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. Ethan had one of his emotional meltdowns. The sound of a broken glass startled him, and he began to shout and cry uncontrollably. Most people froze or left the room when that happened. Michael had seen it countless times: therapists quitting, teachers losing patience, even relatives leaving early because they couldn't handle it. But Clara didn't move an inch. She knelt down and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. You're just scared, not broken." Her tone was calm, steady, motherly. Ethan trembled but slowly looked up at her. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but he began to breathe slower. Clara reached for a soft blanket and gently wrapped it around his shoulders. Then she started humming again, the same melody Michael had heard from his late wife years ago. The sound hit him like lightning. He froze behind the half-open door, gripping the mop handle tightly. It couldn't be. How could she know that song? That lullaby was something only his wife used to sing to Ethan, a tune that never appeared in any therapy session, never recorded, never mentioned. For the first time in years, Michael felt the sting of tears at the corner of his eyes. His disguise didn't protect him anymore. He was no longer a billionaire hiding behind a plan. He was a father, shaken to his core by a simple act of kindness. Later that evening, Michael couldn't stop thinking about it. He went into the security room and replayed the footage from earlier that day. The image of Clara cradling Ethan, whispering and humming, played over and over again on the screen. Each time, it felt less like surveillance and more like a confession, one he couldn't make out loud. Then something else caught his attention. In one of the recordings, Clara was sitting alone after putting Ethan to bed. She took out a small necklace from her pocket, a locket, silver, worn by time. She opened it and stared at the photo inside. Michael zoomed in. His heart skipped a beat when he realized what he was looking at. It was a picture of Ethan as a baby, held in the arms of his late wife. He paused the screen, disbelief washing over him. How could she have that photo? Who was Clara? He stayed awake the whole night, searching through files, staff records, and agency details. But Clara's background seemed strangely clean, almost too clean. No family records, no previous employment in the city, no trace of her name before 2 years ago. By morning, Michael's world no longer felt stable. What started as a test to catch deceit had turned into a mystery he couldn't explain. The woman he suspected of manipulation was now at the center of a truth that threatened to reopen every wound he'd buried since his wife's death. And as the sun rose over the mansion, Michael made a quiet decision. The next time Clara arrived, he would confront her. Not as the janitor, but as the man behind the disguise, unaware that the truth waiting for him was far more personal and far more heartbreaking than he ever imagined. The next morning, Michael couldn't focus on anything else. He had barely slept, haunted by the image of that locket and the photograph inside it. Every question led to another, and every answer he imagined scared him more than the last. When Clara arrived, she was her usual calm self. She greeted the staff politely, then went straight to Ethan's room to check on him. From a distance, Michael watched her push the curtains aside, letting in soft light. Ethan smiled, a real smile, the kind he hadn't seen in years. For a moment, Michael almost forgot his anger. Almost. He waited until the boy was settled before stepping into the room, this time without the janitor uniform. He wore his usual suit, sharp, dark, and intimidating. Clara looked up, surprised. "Sir?" Michael's tone was firm but not loud. "We need to talk. Alone." Clara hesitated but nodded. She glanced at Ethan, who was quietly playing with his puzzle blocks. "I'll be right back, buddy," she said softly before following Michael out. They walked through the long marble hallway until they reached his study. Michael closed the door behind them and stood by the desk. The air was heavy, and the silence between them stretched painfully long. Clara clasped her hands nervously in front of her. Michael finally spoke. "Who are you really?" Clara frowned slightly, confused. "I'm not sure I understand, sir." He opened a drawer, pulled out his tablet, and played the surveillance clip, the one showing her holding Ethan, singing softly, then taking out the locket. The melody echoed faintly through the speakers, filling the quiet room. "That song," he said. "My wife used to sing it. And this," he paused the video, zooming in on the locket. "That photo, where did you get it?" For a moment, Clara didn't move. Her lips trembled slightly, and her eyes glistened. Then she exhaled slowly and sat down. "I knew this day would come," she whispered. Michael's heart pounded. "So it's true? You've been hiding something." Clara shook her head gently. "No, not hiding, protecting." She reached into her bag and pulled out the same silver locket. "This belonged to your wife. She gave it to me the last day I saw her alive." Michael froze. "That's impossible. You didn't even know her." Clara's voice cracked as she spoke. "I did, sir. Years ago, before she married you, she volunteered at a community center for children with disabilities. I was one of those kids. I had speech delays, and she helped me find confidence again. She kept in touch even after leaving. When I became an adult, I started working with special needs children because of her. She was my inspiration." Michael stood silent, speechless. Clara continued, "After the accident, I wanted to reach out, but I knew how private you'd become. When I learned about Ethan's condition, I applied for the job through an agency using my middle name. I didn't come here for money or pity. I came here because your wife once saved me, and I wanted to repay that kindness by helping the boy she loved most." Her words hit him like thunder. He sank slowly into his chair, his eyes unfocused. "You knew all this time who I was?" "Yes," she said softly. "But I never told you because I didn't want my past connection to change how you saw me. I wanted to earn your trust through actions, not words." Michael leaned back, running a hand over his face. All those weeks of suspicion, all those nights watching her on camera, and the truth had been something pure. Something human. He looked at her again. "Why didn't you tell me when I accused you of being dishonest?" Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. "Because I didn't want you to feel trapped by gratitude or guilt. You've lived too long inside walls of fear, sir. I didn't want to be another person you felt you had to question. I just wanted Ethan to laugh again." Michael swallowed hard. The weight of his mistakes pressed against his chest. He thought of every cruel assumption he had made, every moment he had doubted her. His eyes drifted to the window, where he could see Ethan through the glass, still playing peacefully. "Clara," he said quietly, "I watched you for weeks, waiting to catch you doing something wrong. But all I ever saw was someone who brought my son back to life. You didn't just care for him. You cared for me, even when I didn't deserve it." Clara shook her head gently. "You were a father in pain, Mr. Reed. Pain makes people build walls, not because they want to hurt others, but because they're afraid of being hurt again." He stared at her, truly saw her for the first time. Not as a maid, not as an employee, but as someone his wife would have trusted. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The tension melted into something softer, something almost peaceful. Finally, Michael stood and walked to the door. "Clara," he said, voice low, "thank you for giving my son what I couldn't." She smiled faintly. "You gave him everything he needed, sir. Love just needed help finding its way back." Michael turned to look at Ethan once more. The boy was laughing now, sunlight warming his small face. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel like a prison. It felt alive. That night, as Michael reviewed the security footage one last time, he did something he hadn't done in years. He deleted every single file. The cameras that once stood for control were finally silent. And in that silence, a new beginning quietly took shape, not built on suspicion, but on trust, love, and the second chance his family had been waiting for. Weeks passed, and everything inside the mansion began to change, slowly, but deeply. The cameras were gone, the walls no longer echoed with cold silence, and for the first time in years, warmth had returned to that massive home. Ethan's laughter became a daily sound, echoing through the halls that once held only tension. Every morning, Clara arrived early to help him through his exercises. He had grown stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. He could now walk a few steps with support, something no one, not even the doctors, believed possible. Michael stood often by the window, quietly watching them. The sight filled him with pride and humility all at once. For years, he had thought money and control were the only ways to protect what mattered. But Clara, through her patience and care, had shown him something no wealth could buy: the power of genuine compassion. One sunny afternoon, Michael invited Clara and Ethan to the garden. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, and the sound of birds played softly in the background. Ethan was sitting in his chair, a sketchpad on his lap, drawing the three of them together: his father, Clara, and himself. Michael sat beside him and smiled. "That's beautiful," he said. Ethan grinned. "It's our family now," he replied simply. Those words hit Michael deeper than he expected. For a man who had lived years surrounded by people but had felt completely alone, hearing his son call this, their little trio, a family, brought tears to his eyes. Clara sat across from them, her hands resting gently on her knees. Michael turned to her, his voice calm and sincere. "Clara, I owe you more than I can ever repay." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, sir. This family saved me too. Your wife gave me purpose years ago. You and Ethan reminded me what that purpose meant." Michael nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Then maybe we saved each other." There was a long pause, the kind that didn't feel empty but peaceful. The kind that said everything is finally right. Later that evening, Michael walked through the house alone, just as he had so many nights before. But it didn't feel the same anymore. The shadows didn't feel threatening, and the silence didn't feel cold. He stopped by his late wife's photo in the hallway. For the first time, he smiled instead of sighing. "Thank you," he whispered softly, glancing upward, "for sending her to us." Down the hall, he could hear Ethan's faint laughter again, the sound that used to be missing from this home. And in that moment, Michael realized something simple yet powerful. The test he thought he had set for Clara had never really been hers. It was his own. The test of faith, trust, and forgiveness. And thanks to one woman's quiet strength, he had finally passed it. As the night settled, the lights of the mansion glowed warmer than ever before. Inside those walls that once symbolized control and fear now lived peace, laughter, and love, proof that even the most guarded hearts can find healing again, one act of kindness at a time.